Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. We have today author Robert J. Ainsworth Jr. Robert is from Marlborough, and he has his fourth book out, and it is called Duped, and it is based on the true story. You're going to hear all about this. It's a Harry Bartlett mystery, and look at this neat cover. Did you design this yourself?
So I do all your covers myself, yeah.
You do them yourself. I like the way it feels.
Yeah.
It's nice and thick. It's a soft cover. I like the way it is with the black. And that's an actual painting, isn't it?
That's one of the ones that was stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name of this one?
A Lady and Gentleman in Black.
Lady and Gentleman's Black. Now, for those who... You're going to start this off. Boston, a wintry night, 2 hours past the end of the 1990 St. Patrick's Day. This is great for right now. St. Patty's coming up. 2 simultaneous art thefts 2 miles apart. Once in a museum, one in a private residence. One nets 200 million in art, the other nets 2 stolen pieces, bought by a wine merchant. 2 low-level crooks carry out the first one. Uncle Louis, a stolen art retrieval expert, performs the second. The duo leaves via Storrow Drive East. Uncle Louis goes west on the same road. Their paths will cross more than once before a ransom demand expires in 7 days in Duped, a story about the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft. And if you're not from around here in New England, you may not have heard about this, but this is a biggie out here. Start us off, Bob. Tell us about this book.
So I wrote the book because I'd introduced the character in another book called Uncle Louis. And Uncle Louis looks and acts like what he sounds like. He's a mafia strongman. His nose is sort of sideways. His knuckles are all busted.
Yeah.
It's based on a relative of one of my wife's high school girlfriends. So I have Uncle Louis in my head. I know exactly what he looks like.
Yeah.
And so one of my friends liked that character. He says, you need to write a book with Uncle Louis as the main character and Harry Bartlett, my main character, in the background. So I did, and what I looked for was the biggest crime I could find. And I started thinking of the Da Vinci Code, right? That story, it's huge. It's Catholic Church, Mary Magdalene, all that.
Yeah.
And I was like, so what's the biggest crime in Boston? The Gardner theft. And so I needed a way to sort of weave that in. So I created Uncle Louis' backstory as an art retrieval expert. He was doing some other stuff, just like you read. And I wrote the book.
Now, you got inspired by this. When did you write this?
2 years ago.
That's not long.
Yeah. It takes about a year to write a book for me.
You were super inspired. I'm thinking of the first chapter. I'm going back to this. Chapter 1 is titled Push Too Far, North End in Boston, the 1970s. I forgot when this started.
Right.
It goes, tell us what happened, kid. Detective Granby said he was a new detective assigned to the cut-and-dried cases. This one looked as cut-and-dried as they came.
Right.
Now, how did our buddy here, Harry Bartlett, how did he actually get into this, involved? How did he do it?
So he's in this one because he's on the board of directors of the Gardner. And when it gets broken into, he knows to look for somebody who's going to help them find the paintings and the other art that was taken because they've got a ransom demand. So he knows Uncle Louis, who's been his guardian his whole life, so he turns to Uncle Louis and said, you got to help us find this stuff.
Take us through from the beginning, middle to the end. The various characters and how they played out. I saw Auburn mixed up in this, one of the stops.
Yep.
Tell us.
So one of the guys connected with the Gardner was a guy named David Houghton, and he lived out in Auburn. He had really nothing to do with anything except he was connected with a whole bunch of guys who were all connected with the theft. So that's how I brought Auburn into it. But the story just goes from Uncle Louis trying to find the Gardner stuff, but at the same time, people know that the FBI and other people know he's breaking into houses and retrieving stolen art. So the FBI is on his butt to find that stuff. So it sort of gets convoluted, and the paintings that he stole were fakes. So he has to track down who made the fake photo paintings, and it just keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And
how many years did this take for the? And they still haven't solved it.
No.
Will they ever?
So, I hope so.
I don't know.
So I think the paintings are in Revere, Massachusetts.
With?
So there was a guy named Bobby Donati,
Yeah.
who was the guy who obtained the 2 police uniforms that the 2 guys who went into the Gardner wore. And Donati was from Revere. And the day before the theft, he was in a bar showing off the uniforms that he had, that he was going to give to the 2 guys who went in. A year after the theft, the 2 guys who went in had both been killed, and Donati was killed and stuffed in the trunk of his car. He's the only one who has shown one of the stolen items. It was an eagle called a finial. It was Napoleon's. And he tried to pawn that a few months after the theft. The jeweler on Washington Street said, "What are you, nuts? This is hot. I can't sell it." So Donati disappeared. So I think Donati paid 2 guys to go in, took the paintings, stashed them somewhere in Revere, got killed a year later, and the stuff is somewhere in an attic, basement, wall, whatever in Revere. And I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, what are the chances we're going to ever find that one?
Never. Now, to be fair, I give a presentation on the Gardner theft. I've gone to about 30 or 40 libraries and senior centers. And I had a woman in Bourne stand up and say, "You're wrong."
Really?
I said, "Really? Why?" So I went up afterwards and I talked to her, and she said, "Well, my better half was in the mafia, and he told me that all the stuff was selected ahead of time, and as soon as it was stolen, it was shipped all over the world." Okay.
It's possible.
It's possible. I was also in the hospital with, I had a little heart thing, but I was in the hospital and my roommate and I started talking, and when I told him I was writing this book, he laughed at me.
Really?
And I said, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "I can't tell you, I'll have to kill you." He didn't mean it.
Yeah.
But by the time I left, I said to him, "All right, you have to tell me why you think I'm wrong."
Yeah.
He said, "Well, I have a connection to Whitey Bulger." He said, "I'm telling you Whitey did it." So I have somebody telling me the mafia did it. I have somebody else telling me Whitey did it. Hard to know.
Well, we'll never know with Whitey because they got him.
Yeah, there is that. Actually, everybody connected with the Gardner is dead now.
I'm just wondering, speaking of Whitey, did Whitey know what was coming when they shipped him to a different prison? They killed him.
I suspect.
He,
It happened so quickly after he went there. I'm sure he was a smart guy and he knew he was being set up.
It's like makes me wonder about Epstein when he was put in the prison and he was off. He was off.
But
Yeah.
Whitey didn't do it. And the reason is 2 of his guys. So Whitey lived on 15% of whatever crime was committed in his area.
Yeah.
And he asked his 2 guys to go find who did the theft so he could get his 15% of $200 million.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have sent them to do that if he had the paintings. And when they found him in Santa Monica, he had like $1 million and a bunch of guns. He didn't have $200 million and art. So I find it hard to believe that he did it.
Bob.
Yes, ma'am.
You had a heart situation.
Yeah. I just have a stent.
You okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right.
I have nitroglycerin, but I haven't told you about it. So this one. When I play golf, I tell people I have nitroglycerin on me.
Well, that's always good.
Yeah, that's what I
I think my grandfather had. You put it under your tongue.
Right, exactly.
What happens? You have pain, and then you feel it, and then you put it, and it works.
I haven't had to use it yet, so I don't know, but I hope so.
Jeez, I hope
It would be a good thing that it did
I
work.
hope you don't. Geez, you're too young for that nonsense, right?
Thank you.
Now, the following items were stolen from the Gardner Museum. I didn't know what they all were until I saw this book. The concert. What's that all about? 1664 painting?
That's the Vermeer, right?
Yeah.
So there was only 30 or 35 Vermeers out there, and that one's worth $200 million.
Just $200 million.
Something like that.
It was Dutch.
Yeah. So there's a really good movie called The Girl with the Pearl Earring
Yeah.
with Scarlett Johansson and
Oh.
Colin Firth.
Yeah.
And that talks about one of his other paintings that he did.
Most valuable stolen object in the world.
The theft is that you can say whatever it's worth. The items are worth $2, $3, $4, $500 million, but it's the most valuable
Yeah.
unsolved art theft in the world.
Mrs. Gardner, Gardner Museum, purchased it in 1892 for $5,600. Its value, I guess now, stolen, is estimated to be at least $250 million.
Right. So all the items that were stolen,
Yeah.
she paid $142,000 for.
It says $5,600.
That's that one piece. All 13 combined. All 13 pieces she paid
Yeah.
$142,000 for. And they're worth, pick a number, $500 million? A big number, lots of zeros.
The Storm on the Sea of Galilee.
That's a Rembrandt. That's the only painting he did of a ship, of the sea. He didn't do many of those.
Estimated to be at least $100 million now.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody's sitting on a real.
You don't know. You don't know. That's the other thing. How do you sell something like that? It's like stealing the Mona Lisa. Who's going to buy it from you? And if they buy it, they can't show it. So where did it go? Russian oligarchs, Colombia drug lords, Saudi Arabian princes. Take your pick. Who knows?
That's something you'd think the people who stole it, I mean, maybe this is asking too much intelligence-wise, but you would think they'd think ahead, unless they already had the buyers.
So there was another theory. And there were a bunch of these same guys in this group who had stolen art, and when they got caught, turned over the paintings so they would not go to jail. And there were a couple of guys in jail at the time who it was possible that the guys who stole it would say, here's all your 13 works of art, let my guys out of jail. And that makes the most sense to me.
Say that again now?
I have friends in jail. You let my friends out of jail, I'll give you the 13 pieces of stolen art.
Now, who's going to let them out of jail? The jail, the warden?
No, they'll go to the governor or whoever. They were in Massachusetts jails. The guys who were friends with the thieves were in Massachusetts jails.
So they would talk with the governor.
Yeah, or they'd call up the gardener and say, you want your stuff back? Make a deal and we'll give you the stuff back and you get away to get my friends out of jail.
But then they're also bringing in the governor or somebody, and the governor has to be willing to be part of this.
For $500 million in art, I think he would do it. He'd get a lot of votes for doing that.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd want to be involved. We are talking with Bob Ainsworth, and what a genius on this. This book is about the famous Garden Museum stolen art that still has not been solved back in the 1970s. Here in Massachusetts, if you're out of the country, not even in the part this part of the world, this is a very, very, very famous theft here in Massachusetts. Very famous artwork in the museum and the Garden Museum.
Which is a gorgeous museum, by the way.
The what?
It's a gorgeous museum.
Oh, I've never been there.
So it was built by Isabella, and she shipped entire rooms, floors, balconies, ceilings from Europe back here.
Italy? Would it have been Italy?
Italy, Germany, Spain, all of that. And so the building itself is the museum, because the things in it, you look at, the floor came from Spain, the ceiling came from a chapel in France, the walls came from some other place. So the building itself is the museum, on top of all the 3 floors of art that she has. Now there's a couple other 1,000 pieces of art on the 4th floor that we can't see.
Why?
Because her will said that if you move anything in the museum, one piece, away from where she wanted it, then you have to sell everything in the museum, you have to sell the building, and everything goes to Harvard University.
So who would know if something moved?
The trustees of her will. That will can't be broken.
Why?
So that's why if you go to the museum now, the frames that the stolen items were in are back up on the wall, because that goes according to her will, which is keep everything where
Even
it
though there's
was.
nothing in the frame, they're up there.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so when they were stolen, they didn't take the frames.
They didn't take the frames.
They just cut it out.
Cut, ripped, all
What
that.
I want to know is how did they get out of there? A back door, this basement? How did they get out of there without being seen?
Well, they got out the same way they went in. So they buzzed the side. So there were two guys in Boston police uniforms.
Yeah.
They buzzed the side entrance. They said, "We hear there's a disturbance. Let us in." The security guard lets them in. They jam him up against a wall, threaten him, have him call the other guard down, jam him up against a wall, threaten him, take the two of them to the basement, duct tape them to pipes.
And changed their outfits.
No, they didn't have to. They stayed in the police uniforms.
Okay.
And then for the next hour or so, they went about the gardener stealing the stuff. Then when they were done, they came back downstairs. They left a broken frame on the security director's chair. They took the videotape so nobody could see who they were. They took a tape which registered all the movements around the
Whoa.
gardener and walked out and got into a 1988 red Dodge Daytona hatchback and drove away. And that was it.
And how many did they take it out?
13 pieces.
That's it.
Yeah.
And how long did it take? Half hour?
It took an hour and 40 minutes.
All right, a little
An
longer.
hour, 20 minutes.
Where did they go as soon as they left?
So the road they took, so Palace Road is to this is the Gardner, this is Palace Road, and this is the Fens. Fenway Park's over here, the
Yeah.
Museum of Fine Arts over here. So they drove past the Gardner, probably took a right, went around the Fens, got on Sturrow Drive, and took off.
Do we know where they went from there?
Nope.
And
I
so
know where they worked.
They actually worked that bunch?
So the guys who did it, with 99% certainty, have been named. We know where they worked.
But wasn't Patriarca, he was in on this?
So, not directly.
Yeah,
So there was a place called TRC Auto Electric in Dorchester.
yeah.
So the two guys who went in, the guy who had the police uniforms, and a bunch of other guys all worked at TRC Auto Electric. The guy who owned TRC Auto Electric was an underboss to Patriarca,
In Rhode Island.
yeah, and ran a cocaine ring out of that auto repair store.
But isn't Patriarca still alive?
No. So Patriarca Sr. died in the 1980s,
Okay,
and then his son took over,
yeah.
and then there was sort of a war, and I don't keep up on mafia stuff, but I don't think any of the Patriarchas are in the business anymore. They may be, I have no idea. But this is all very public knowledge. This is
Yeah.
nothing like I've investigated.
No,
this is easy
no.
stuff.
This is fascinating. Bob, how can people reach you if they need to, if they'd like to have you come speak or that type of thing?
So I have a website, www.rainsworthjr.com. I have an email address, b_ainsworthjr@hotmail.com.
Mhm.
So any of those places.
How far are you willing to travel?
I've gone to Bourne. I've gone to Chatham on the Cape.
The Cape, yeah?
Yeah. Well, those were friends that I went to Chatham for.
Sure.
But right now I'm sort of doing within 20, 25 miles of Marlborough.
Fine.
And
Don't
so
forget, you're
it's a
being
pretty- it's a-
seen all over.
Yeah.
There could be somebody out in New York City. I'm serious. People, watching all over in California who might. Don't be surprised if they connect with you.
That would be
Would
fine.
you be willing to go?
To California, if they pay.
Okay.
They have to pay the ticket.
What's your favorite venue to go to speak? Where do you get the most interest? I mean, everyone's interested, but the most.
Well, it's different audiences. So libraries are slightly older audience. I mean, slightly younger audience.
Younger, yeah.
So they're they could be in their 20s, 30s, up to 60.
Senior centers, how about that?
So I go to a lot of senior centers.
Yep.
They're older, and I have to talk louder, and I need a microphone because they can't hear. But that's okay. Once I start talking,
Oh, yeah.
they're very interested, and they're of an age where they know about the theft.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes pretty well. What was the most fun?
How about
I guess
bookstores? Bookstores at all?
So
What
I went.
indie bookstores?
There aren't many.
Oh, there are now up here.
I went to I went to one bookstore and two people showed up.
Where? Here in Worcester?
It doesn't matter where, but I went to one and it didn't work out there. Now, it was a bright sunny day, it was a Saturday afternoon, so I sort of understood. So actually I think that my favorite was the very first one I did, in Gardner, Massachusetts. Not the
Obviously.
Isabella Gardner theft.
Yeah.
No, different. This is the Gardner Historical Museum. It was the first one I did.
Of course.
And I met two people there. One was the director, and he got a phone call from an anonymous tip saying, I think my neighbor across the street has the paintings. Please come, and here's the address.
What? That'd be the ones that were stolen?
Yeah,
No,
but he called the Gardner Mass Museum instead of the Isabella Gardner Museum. So the director called the FBI. They came right out. They took the tape, and the next day they were in Manchester, Connecticut, and tore a guy's house apart named Bobby Gentile. They didn't find anything.
No.
So I met him there. The other guy I met there was a decade before the theft. There was a tip that the Gardner was going to be broken into. And this guy was the head of security at the Gardner at the time. So he was in that meeting. So it's really cool, like meeting two people who are so connected to it. And since then, I've probably got 20 people who have come to me and said they know the security guards, they know people connected with the theft. I've met some FBI agents. I've met all sorts of people because they select, right?
Yeah,
they know
sure.
the topic.
Yeah.
They show up because they like it.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who I golf with, his grandmother was hired to create new curtains for the Gardner.
Yeah.
And she had to get the exact fabric from the 1900s
Yeah.
to make it. And when she did, he helped her hang the stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like all these interesting
Yeah.
little connections of
Yeah.
people to the theft.
Bob, show us these other books that you wrote.
Sure.
This isn't the first.
No.
No.
So
this is Duped, but
So
like you
I
said,
write a whole bunch. So I was trying to explain. It's a little convoluted, but this was the first one I wrote, and it's based on the North Shore of Boston. And these are sexy doppelschwindlers.
It's
which
called
is
Scammed.
scammed. And so I made up a word called doppelschwindlers.
Another mystery by Henry Bartlett.
Harry Bartlett. And so it's on the North Shore of Boston, which is where my wife comes from. And I write what I know. I write where I've been. Even though I wrote this first, it was published third. So after I wrote this one, a friend of mine said, well, I don't know Harry Bartlett enough. You need to introduce him. So I know Nantucket very well, so I wrote Conned. And this one introduces Harry. But then when I wrote this, somebody said, oh, I really like Uncle Louie. You've got to write an Uncle Louie book.
So here it comes.
So I wrote my Uncle Louie book. So in order, this one's 1990, this one's next, and this one's third.
Okay, wait.
But that's not how I wrote them.
No, but the one right now that you want
Is Duped.
Duped, okay.
It's Duped,
But
right.
the very, very, very first one was Scammed.
Scammed.
Then you wrote Conned.
Then I wrote Conned. Then I wrote Duped.
Okay, so the one that's interesting me especially right now is Conned, because that was out in Nantucket. What was he doing out there? What was his gig there?
Oh, so Harry, to make it easy, I'm sort of a simple guy. I was an ex-accountant, chief financial officer.
Oh, a mathematician.
Right, so I make Harry somewhat in my image,
Yeah.
and somewhat in an image of a guy I worked for who was the smartest man I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
He created a tic-tac-toe program on a computer in the late 50s and got into MIT. Just a genius guy. Anyway, so Harry Bartlett's a combination of this guy and me. So Harry is a soon-to-be retiring chief financial officer on Nantucket, on vacation with his best friend from high school, and he finds his friend dead in a snapping turtle pond,
Oh,
of which there really is one on the west end of Nantucket. There's a snapping turtle pond.
and the turtle got him.
Well, a bunch of turtles got him. and he pulls his friend dead out of the snapping turtle pond
Yeah.
after the turtles have all done this. Then he goes to tell the guy's widow, and she tells him she has $20 in her wallet, and all their money is gone. Her husband controlled it all, and she doesn't know where it went. And so
Okay.
he has to figure out where all the money went, because this guy was very wealthy. He was a wine merchant, which is the wine
What
merchant.
about his wallet when he drowned?
Well, that was... He was worth millions,
Yeah.
and all she had was $20.
Yeah.
So Harry has to figure out where all the money went,
Yeah.
which leads him to other cons and frauds that are being run on Nantucket. There's a fake wine scam. There's a steal the title to your home scam.
But he may have been scammed.
No, he wasn't. Harry figured it out and gets the bad guy.
Have you got an extra one of those I could read?
We might arrange that.
Oh, cool.
And so
awesome.
Harry, at the end, becomes a full-time private detective because he's retiring anyway.
Yeah.
And his office becomes the building across from Fenway Park above Twin Souvenir Store.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? You know that building, the corner? So in my books, he's on that second floor.
This sounds really cool.
Well, like I said, I write
with Robert Parker.
Yeah, of course.
He is until I met you, my all-time favorite author. He died way too young.
Yeah.
And I think I've got to wrap it up.
Oh.
I think I've got a collection of Parker's books.
So I have a quick story about him.
Go, what?
So I met
Did you meet him?
No, but I met a guy at a book festival who was a Northeastern professor with Parker.
Yeah.
At the same time. They shared an office.
Yeah.
So he's over here, doing his stuff, and they're like, Parker's over here, like, typing away, and they're like, what are you doing? He goes, I have this character, Spencer, and I'm writing these books.
Yeah.
And then the guy just took off.
Yeah,
And so-
he really did have a dog.
Oh, yeah.
I think named Pearl. He has a way of writing that intrigued me. There's not a whole lot of characters I have to get lost in and go back and check.
It's very simple.
Right to the point.
And they're short. So most books have to be 80,000 words, 350 pages. His are not even 250 and maybe 60,000 words.
Yours are very easy to read.
Yeah, thank you. I write short, quick
Yes.
paragraphs. They move along.
You get to the point.
I try to.
That's a kind of. If I hate to say it, but if an author hands me a book that there's too many characters, if I have to go back and say, "Oh my God,
Right.
I can't do it."
Well, you can overwrite. You can put too much stuff in that isn't necessary.
Yeah.
So, I like Elmore Leonard. I like David Baldacci. I like Michael Conley. Janet Ivanovich. I like that style of writing. And
who's that new one out? Ware, W-A-R-E.
Yeah.
She's pretty good.
She's pretty
Although
good.
she scared the hell. One of her books was. It was a little too much. This woman they ended up imprisoning her in this room on a yacht in the bottom. I tend to read at 2 in the morning, and I'm like, it was a little too real.
Yeah. Well, I read all the Perry Mason stories as a kid.
You read Perry Mason? I didn't.
As a kid. And then I'd watch the TV shows in black and white.
I have a friend who loved Perry Mason.
They're still on. They're in repeat now. My wife's hooked on them.
How about Dateline with? I like Keith Morrison.
Don't know that.
He's one of the. Well, Keith Morrison is one of the hosts.
Yeah.
In Dateline, who will. I hear you. Who will host one of the mysteries? He has an easy style.
Yeah.
An interesting way of talking. I don't like the ones who just go. All right.
Yeah, I haven't seen
we
him.
could go on to. We're gonna have him on again. You got another book coming up?
Actually, I do. I'm writing one. I'm putting my characters in 1920, and they're scammed by Charles Ponzi. So the one I'm writing now is called
Ponzi
Ponzi.
scheme?
Yeah.
I'm on.
A
I love
Ponzi
it.
scheme on Charles Ponzi.
Oh,
So that's the one I'm finishing now.
Love this. I love that type of stuff. Whodunit, Ponzi's, thrillers. I'm on it.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us,
Oh,
Bob.
thank you for having me.
We're thinking,
It was a lot
let
of
me
fun.
know when the next one comes out.
Glad to.
We keep
Sometime
you
this
wanting
summer.
it. Yes. This summer?
Yeah.
Good. That's soon. Thank you. We'll
Yep.
see you next time on Be My Guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.